Okay, so good morning, everyone. I think in the last sessions we have started with the chapter 4 of a unit 1, and we have studied about two packages. That is, one is your javax.servlet.star, and one was your javax.servlet.http.star. Okay, so from the first package, we have already covered your seven interfaces plus one class. I'll just have one brief about those interfaces and the class. I'll just take a name of those interfaces. So the very first interface which we have studied about your servlet interface. Okay, and next was your servlet context, then your servlet config, then your servlet request, servlet response. Then we have servlet input stream, servlet output stream. Okay, so these are all the interfaces you had in your first package. Then we had only one class available, that is your generic servlet class. It's not like that we don't have another classes available. We have numbers of interfaces and classes available, but what you are going to use in terms of your practicals or what there is there in your syllabus. Okay, so we are just doing that one. So now we have seven interfaces, and then we have one class, that is your generic servlet class. Okay, so that all comes under your first package, that is your javax.servlet.star. Fine. Now we have another package called javax.servlet.http.star. So why we require the different interfaces and the classes? The only thing is that they are all able to handle the different types of data. Okay, like someone is going to have the multimedia types of data, something is being used for request and response, some interfaces are being used for request and response in the form of binary data. So that is all like different working we have in all the interfaces and class. Fine. So now the next and most important is your second package, which is we are going to use maximum when we are going to start with the practicals. Okay, so that is your javax.servlet.http.star. No doubt you have to mandatorily write both the packages in your program. Okay, and you are going to use the numbers of interfaces and the classes. You also have to extend or implement the interfaces of your first package because you require the features of those packages also. Okay, so now the very first class which you are going to have in your second package, that is your http servlet class. Okay, so now when we know that there is one interface available in your first package, that is the very first interface, that is what your servlet interface. Now why we want a servlet? I told you students that if I'm writing a Java program, okay, and I am trying to implement the servlet into it. Okay, so I have to give instructions to my Java code that I wanted to do something like this where I can implement my servlet code. Okay, so for that need, I am doing first thing is what I'm importing the packages. Okay, and the second thing what I'm going to do, I'm just going to call those interfaces, predefined interfaces in my Java code. So when I am going to use the first package and I want to create the servlet using the first package interface, I can use servlet interface. Okay, so simply what I can do is class ABC implement servlet. So what it will happen, then servlet is going to be implemented in your program. Fine. Now why we are using keyword call implement? Because ultimately it's an interface. Okay, next option which you have to create a servlet in your Java program is what your HTTP servlet. Now, I told you the difference between why we are using the generic package and why we are using the HTTP specific package, because they are specifying the protocol called as HTTP in terms of second package. Okay, it is specifically having a protocol HTTP and HTTPS when we talk about the second package. Okay, so now again doing the same thing, the first interface, your servlet interface, and this class doing the same thing, creating the servlet in your Java code. The only thing is that it is more specified to your protocols, the first one is not. Okay, so now here what I'm going to do is I'm going to create one class, user defined class, say for example class ABC, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to call this particular HTTP class to just create the servlet in my program, and it is going to extend one class, that is what your extends generic servlet class. Now in last lectures, in the last package, we know that there is only one class which we have learned in your first package, that is your generic servlet class. And what we know there, that it is a protocol independent class. Okay, so generic servlet is nothing but it's a protocol independent class. So that means it can handle any type of data or a content. Fine. So that's why when we talk about this particular HTTP servlet class, we have to extend this generic servlet class because we are somewhere or the other, we are bounded with one of the protocols. Okay, so if I wanted to handle any type of data using that protocol, I can extend which class? Generic servlet class. It's completely dependent on the developers. It's not mandatory. Okay, but it's a good habit that we can do something like this where I can have options to have the independence of the contents and the data where I'm going to deal with. Okay, I'll not be going to be very much specified with the number, type of data. Okay, so now your this particular class, HTTP servlet class, is going to have some specific methods. Okay, so that methods can be your do get, do post, do head. Most probably you're not using the rest of the methods are available into this particular class. You're just going to have two important methods, that is one is do get and do post. What is the difference? I'll let you know surely in the next slide. Okay, so what is the syntax of using this HTTP servlet class? You're going to have a class HTTP servlet extends which class? That is your generic servlet class. Okay, now here we have to understand that we are going to have this HTTP servlet class, but this class is going to work like an abstract class. Okay, see students, whenever we write a program, okay, you're never going to create your main class with the predefined name. If you remember, we have studied about the keywords in Java. Okay, and I told you that we cannot use the keywords as our, the names of the variables or names of the class. We cannot do that. Okay, so now what basically we have to do, we are going to have a class which is predefined class, but they have been considered as a abstract class. That means they will not have any type of implementation. We'll not write anything into it. We'll not write anything into the body of the abstract class. We'll just have an abstract class with an abstract method without any other body, without any other code written into it. Okay, but what we have to do, we have to extend and we have to call these abstract class, and we have to override the methods of this abstract class immediately to the main class. Okay, so now for example, I am having this abstract class, say HTTP servlet, and I am having some abstract methods present inside this servlet. What I have to do is, say for example, the methods are do get and do post. What I can do is I can create a main class that can be your class ABC, where I'm going to have a main thread, and in that I have to compulsorily override the methods which I have written into this or which are present into this HTTP servlet abstract class. This is how it is going to work. Okay, so there is no implementation available and you cannot even use the keywords which is already defined in the Java. Fine, so this is how you're going to call these classes and you can use it. You cannot have the direct implementation, so what you have to do, you just have to create as an abstract class and create the implementation in the main class. Fine. Now, when we talk about the HTTP servlet class, I told you that it is going to work like an, this abstract class which has to be overridden into your main class, and it has number of methods available, but at least one method you have to override in your, the main class or in your user defined class. So you can see while doing the practical also, some or the other way, you are going to use either do get method or a do post method in your main class. Okay, this has to be there because your servlet is working for your server, web server. Whatever we are coding into the servlet, using this servlet, we are doing it for the web server. So we have to get the request and the responses, request from the client and responses from the database. I have an option to do that. I have an option to receive that request and send the response with the help of these two methods. That's why we have to mandatorily override these two methods in my servlet program. Okay, and then rest we have init and destroy method, we have a get servlet info method, we have a put method, we have a delete method which is having their own task, like it is going to delete the request if I wanted to delete any type of HTTP request. Okay, so this is like your init and destroy, they are all there in your servlet lifecycle. If you remember, we had three things, that is your initialization, we had service method, and then we have a destroy method. So here we have to understand one more difference. When we talk about the first package, maximum thing were working inside your service method. Okay, if you remember, we have created number of objects of your servlet request and servlet response. Okay, so that object we can use throughout our program and throughout our code. Here the service method is not going to be there. Okay, what is going to be there, it is like something your do get and do post method, which is going to work in place of your service method. Okay, now we have one thing over here that we know that servlets are going to run on multi-threaded servers. That means we can have, simultaneously number of processing, number of requesting from the client, which can be handled by the servlets. We just have to be careful that it is going to synchronize to access the shared resources. That means what, if I have, for example, 10 requests coming concurrently or simultaneously to my web server, so my web server has to be multi-threaded server. That means one thread is going to, handle one request. So there will be number of threads are available into your server. So it's not about that servers are having the multi-threads. It's about your program, what you are going to write. Okay, and we know that how to create the multi-threads. Okay, we had a complete chapter in SY that how to create a multi-thread in your program. So we are just assigning single threads to the single request, and so that it is not going to overlap, it is going to have a synchronization while accessing the shared resources. What does it mean? So we have a memory, we have a databases, we have network connections. We are not going to have individual database, network, or memory for each request. It is going to be only one, where number of requests are coming and they wanted to access that resources. So servlets are capable, and they are doing it very easily, and they are doing using the multi-threading options, where we can create the multiple threads and we can handle the concurrent request, simultaneous request. Fine. Now, we have number of methods available in your HTTP servlet class. So we are going to see one by one. First is your do get method. Again, here, if you'll see, I have two, class, or you can say two interfaces available. That is your HTTP servlet request and HTTP servlet response. If you remember, we have written this kind of thing inside your service method. Okay, so what we used to do in the service method, so we had a service method where we used to create the servlet request and servlet response object. Okay, so now here we are talking that this particular interfaces and classes available in second package are more specified to the protocols. That's why it is been considered as what, HTTP servlet request and HTTP servlet response. Okay, so what is the task of these two? It is going to handle the request, and it is definitely going to be invoked by your web containers. Okay, why is that so? Because the web container is holding all the codes what we are writing it. Fine. So here this REQ and RESP is nothing but the object of the specific, the classes what we are using it. Now, when we talk about the next method, that is what your do post method. The only difference between your do post and the do get method is, now here what do post is allowing you, you can have the number of data with an unlimited length to your web server at a very single point of time. So that you can do with the help of do post. Okay, which some or the other we are going to have the limitations when we are going to use a do get method. Okay, so both are sending and both are handling the request of the client. The only thing is that when we have less number of data with a limited length, we can use the do get method. But when we have the do post method, that means we are having the unlimited length of the data, which we cannot even predict what type of data and how much length of data is going to come to a web server. Okay, so it's a good habit that we can use the do post every time, because it is not bounded to the length. It's not saying that it is only going to work for a longer length of the data. It can work the smaller length of the data also. Next is what your do delete. Okay, so it is going to handle the delete request. So for example, if I wanted to remove as a client any document or any web page or any data from the server, I can easily do it with the help of do delete. Now, as a developer, you have to code it. You have to write this particular method into your code to allow your client, if the client wants to delete something from his end or her end from the server. Okay, so for example, I have created an account in one of the online platform and I don't wanted to use it anymore, I can delete it. Okay, so it's not like that I don't have option of deleting that particular account. I cannot be, it's mandatory that for me to continue with that same account. I can do that. If I wanted to deactivate, if I wanted to delete my Facebook account, I can easily do it, because something has been written to the another end to to happen that. Fine. So as a developer, we have to use these kind of methods where I can allow my clients to have an easy access and easy access to my server where he can do anything whatever he wants to. Okay, now it was all about your HTTP servlet class. Okay, so there we had generic servlet class. So here we had the HTTP servlet class. Okay, now we are going to learn about the interfaces available. Fine. I hope that you all know the difference between the class, interface, and abstract class. Enough difference I have given you in your SY regarding your abstract class and the interface. Both are the abstract class. They don't have their own implementation. The only thing is that the abstract class, what we create is a user defined abstract class. What interface we create is a predefined abstract class available in your Java. Okay, so when we use a keyword called interface, how we create an interface name, that's an very easy syntax we have. So when we use a keyword called interface, your program is going to understand, okay, it's something which is already there in my place. Okay, and when we talk about the abstract class, we are being compulsory we have to use a keyword called abstract class whenever we are going to use a method, whenever we are going to create a method inside your abstract class. Okay, and that's not there in your interface. You don't have to use any keyword called abstract whenever you are going to write any method inside your interface. It's automatically been considered as it is an abstract method which has to be overridden in the main class. Fine, so that is one difference we should know about the interface and the abstract class. So now the next one which we are going to learn is all about your HTTP servlet request interface. And similarly, we are also going to have the HTTP servlet response interface. So when we talk about servlet request and servlet response, we know that why it is being used. Okay. The only thing is that one word which has been attached to it, it is HTTP because it is protocol specific. Okay, so now we have numbers of methods over here that this particular interface is going to help me to get the cookies and the sessions. Okay, now what do you mean by cookies and sessions? We are going into much deeper in the further slides that I wanted to focus more on this because this is also a very important part of this chapter, and you can definitely expect one or two questions regarding these things. Okay, so I'm going to go in very much detail. That time you'll understand that what this means, getting the cookies and getting the sessions using this interface. So we have methods called get cookies, which is going to return to me, or it is going to send the cookies to the client whenever the client is going to request anything from the server. Okay, how it has been written, that I'll let you know, don't worry. When we have the next method, that is something we known as get session. Okay, so it is going to return the current session associated with the request. So for example, I am requesting something to my server. So whenever server is going to return to me the response, it is going to start with the session between the client and the server. And if I'm trying to identify what sessions have been there with the particular client, so if I'm not able to find the sessions, it is going to create a new one for that particular client. Okay, then we have next path info, that is it is going to give me an extra information associated with the client request. Then we have another one, that is what your HTTP servlet response interface. So we studied about HTTP servlet class, we studied about the HTTP servlet request interface, and then we are now learning about the HTTP servlet response interface. In place of servlet request, so basically we always try to get something from the client side. When we talk about servlet response, we always try to send something, we are always try to give response to the client. So from the user end, you also have to understand that which methods I have to use so that the client is going to get what he is or she is actually expecting from server. And when we talk about the servlet response, we have to understand that from a developer point of view, that what things we have to send it to the client along with the request. Okay, so when I try to send the response, or else I am expecting from my server that server should respond to the client. So while responding, I should also do something that I can have this method, add cookie method. So what it will do, whenever it is going to send the request to the response to the client, it is going to send one more thing, that is what cookie. Okay, now next one is what your encode URL. That is nothing but it is going to have the encoding, or you can say authentication, or you can say that whenever sending the response to the client, it will also send one more thing, that is what your session ID. Okay, that will be a unique ID. That ID, if it has been allotted to one particular user, it is not been used anywhere in any part of the world. Okay, once the session gets expired, the ID is going to get free. Okay, and it has been allotted to someone else also. Now next one is what your contains header method. Fine. So now it is going to return me the boolean values, either yes or no, whatever the boolean values we can get. Okay, and why we are using this particular method? Just to check whatever the header I am sending in the form of response. Okay, so I can identify whether it has been, sent or not. I can do that with the help of the name of that particular header. Okay, so I'm just checking whether the response which I am sending it is containing this particular header or not with the header name. So if it is containing that particular header, so it is going to give me a response in the form of yes or true, whatever boolean value we are going to set for. Okay, now next is what your HTTP session, and the most important part. There we are going to learn about two things, that is, one is cookies and one is sessions. Okay, so now both cookies and sessions are going to use for storing the information. First thing what we have to understand over here is both are going to help me to store my information. Okay, second difference what you're going to learn is the cookies are going to get stored on your client side machines, where the sessions are going to get stored in both the places. Okay, so these two differences we just have to understand over here, and one by one we are going to learn about both the things in detail. So the first difference is what, or we can say the first point, that both are getting used to store the information. Second thing, what we should know, that the cookies are going to get stored on your client side machines, and the sessions are going to get stored on both the side, that is your client as well as your server. Now students, here we have to understand the exact difference of both sessions and cookies. Okay, so now when we talk about the very first thing, that is your session. Okay, now the sessions is nothing but it is going to create a file where I am going to have my information. Okay, client's information, or you can say whatever conversations we are having between the client and the web server, it is going to get stored into one of the file, which is going to get stored into one of the temporary directory on your web server. Okay, so now this file is going to get all the information, what I am sending, what I am requesting as a client, and what responses I am getting from my server. That is all going to be maintained in one file. Okay, and that is also going to be present into one of the temporary directory of your web server, and that particular thing is going to be identified with one of the registered session variable, or you can say one of the registered session name. Okay, now this data is going to be available to all the pages which I am going to visit as a client. Okay, and during the session only. When the session is going to get expire, you are going to lose all the information what you have stored, because it is all temporary data. Okay, now what do you mean by session? If suppose I am requesting something and it is going to my web server, and the web server is authenticating me and sending back the response, so that communication which is live, okay, that is something we known as what your sessions, which is going on. Okay, so where and how your sessions are going to end? When you're going to close the application, when you're going to close your browser, when you're going to stop using that particular application, so automatically your sessions are going to get terminated. Okay, and it is been defined for a some period of time. Okay, so commonly it is maybe for 30 minutes only after you just close your application. So it is going to just alive for more 30 minutes, and if you come back to that 30 minutes, you are going to have the again the same sessions with the same session ID. Okay, now here when we talk about the cookie, when we talk about the cookies, now I told you that cookies are something again getting some data to be getting stored on the client machine. So we know that the cookies are going to get stored on your client side, and sessions are going to get in both the places. They are all containing, both the things are containing the some piece of information, even in cookies and even in sessions. Sessions are mostly working with the servers, and cookies are mostly working with the client computers. Okay, Cookies are something text files which are being created and getting stored into your client computer, and the sessions, they're also again containing some piece of information but getting stored into the particular server. Okay, now here, what you mean by cookies? Now whenever I am going to request something to my web server, okay, I'm sending a request. Say for example, I want to get load the page something called as facebook.com. So when it is going there to the server, okay, it will just authenticate me. Okay, and after authentication, what will happen? Your server is going to send me the response, but along with the response, it is going to send one more thing. That is what your cookie is. Okay, now what is happening? Your response is coming to you. That means your page is getting loaded into your client computer, but along with that, the cookies are also coming, which is getting stored into your local machine. Now, what is the use of that particular cookies which is getting stored on your local machine? For what purpose it is happening? Say, for example, after a certain period of time, okay, again, I am trying to accessing, the same page, the facebook.com, and I'm sending again the same request to my web server. Request is going, but this time the request is not going alone. This time the cookies is going to be associated with your request and it is going to your server. Okay, once it is reaching to the server, then server is going to identify, oh, it is having the cookies, so that means I don't have to authenticate it again. Okay, that means I have already done it and I don't have to do it. So what will happen? It will immediately send me the response. Okay, so there you're going to have the time and the performance is going to come. Okay, so it is going to be more improved performance you're going to get whenever you're going to request for the second time. Now, for how much long the cookies are going to get stored in your client machine, it is not for the lifetime. Okay, by default, if as a developer I am not mentioning in my program that the cookies which I'm trying to send from the web server to my client whenever it is going to request something, okay, so by default how much period of time it is going to be allowed? It is for 24 hours. Okay, so 24 hours it is going to take and it is be there in your local machine. So within 24 hours, if you try to access the same page, it is going to have a cookies and it is going to send, along with your request to the web server. And tomorrow if you're trying to access the same page, till that time your cookies are going to get expire and then again you're going to get the new cookie. Okay, so by default it is 24 hours the life of the cookie, but as a developer you can extend the lifetime or the period of time which you want to be, this cookie should be alive in your local machine. So if as a developer I'm saying that it should be there for 2 days or 3 days or 1 week or 2 weeks, I can do that very easily. And so it is going to increase the lifetime of the cookies in the local machine of a client. Okay, so whenever the next time the browser is going to send the same request, it is going to send the cookie information also, and the server is going to use that information to identify the user. So you don't have to authenticate and complete that procedure again to identify and authenticate the user. Okay, I hope I am clear with this. We'll simply go with the differentiation between your cookie and the session over here. Now, the first thing is what your cookie. I told you that cookie are the client-side files which contains the user information. Sessions are something being both that client side and server side. The major role which is going to work and happen is going to be on server side. So it is also going to contain some user information. Now here the cookie ends depending on the lifetime you set for it. You means as a developer what you set for it. Okay, and if you don't, then it is going to be by default for 24 hours. When we talk about the session is going to end as soon as the user is going to close the application or a browser. Okay, now you don't need to start the cookie as it is, obviously getting stored into your local machine. So whenever you are going to have the same request, the cookie is going to get activated and it is going, automatically and getting associated with the request and it is going to the web server. Here you have to write something about your sessions if it wants to start. Okay, so if whenever I want to start a session, so I have to have this particular method which needs to get invoked before we start with the session. Okay, so the official maximum size of the cookie is 4 KB, which is getting stored very small file. Okay, in your local machine it is getting stored. When we talk about the session, you can have n number of data. There is no limit of sending the data. You can store as much as information you want. Okay, the only thing is that just to say that what is the maximum memory, the limit it is going to hold at one point of time. So it is going to be 128 MB by default, but it can go beyond that also. Fine. Now, so cookie is not at all dependent on session, but your session is completely dependent on cookie. Okay, the session is not going to build until and unless the cookie is not going to come into the picture. Fine. There is no function named called it as unset cookie. That means there is no something, cookie is having any type of method which will destroy the cookie. There is no method is available. But if I wanted to destroy, if I wanted to, conclude or end the session, I can do it with the help of destroy method. That means as a developer, I have to write this method in my program, which is going to get invoked whenever the, browser or the application is closed. So whenever user is trying to close the application, so whatever basically happening, it is the method which is getting invoked. That is your destroy method, which is nothing happening in your cookie. Okay. So I hope we have understood what is the difference between your cookie and the session. Okay. You will be having one thing in your mind that, that in session, I told you that we are going to end the session whenever we are going to close the application. You also have an option to increase the lifetime of the session as a developer. Okay, and we have a specified classes available to do that, specified methods to do that. So if I don't want that, by default it is 30 minutes. If I am closing an application, that means my session ID and my sessions are getting live till 30 minutes if the request or if the client is getting again connected into that time frame. Okay, but in terms of cookie, I'm getting 24 hours to use that same, the cookie which I am having. So if I wanted to do it same for my session, I have an option, but I have to mention it as a developer in my program. Okay, so the basic thing the session works, I have told you, and how you can increase the, lifetime or a life period of a session. You can also do that with the help of some available classes in your Java. Now, the next one is what your HTTP session syntax. How you're going to do that? Obviously, it is an interface. So what syntax we carry for the interface while creating interface, that is your interface name. So what is an interface name over here? It's your HTTP session. So why we are using this HTTP session? Because we wanted to identify a user more than one page request or more than one page is what the client and the user is trying to visit to a website. So that means if, for example, I have an application, I have a website, okay, where I have number of different web pages available, like your college websites. Take the example of that. You have number of things available, number of web pages we have been there associated, or linked to each other. So if I'm using this particular thing, this particular interface, that is HTTP session, so it is allowing me to visit to the different web pages within the application. Okay, and within that application I can visit to more than one pages, and it is going to be recorded into your session. So it's not like that for one web page you have to have the one particular session created. No, but yes, if I am using an application called facebook.com, I have one session. If I'm using the another application, I am going to get another session. Okay, so that means if I am having numbers of different application running, I am going to get different session IDs and session. It is going to be created. But if I'm having only one application, and inside that application I have number of web pages, I don't need to have different session IDs and number of things I can do with the help of single one session ID. Okay, now here again, we are going to create a session and using the protocol specified thing that can be your HTTP client and HTTP server. That means the client and server both are going to get this protocol. They are going to use this protocol whenever we are having the sessions. Okay, it is going to persist for a specified time period. It is a very temporary thing which is available, but we can increase the lifetime of the session. Okay, and then here what we have to understand, the session is usually going to correspond to one user who visit a site many times. Okay, and this is only possible when we are alive on the session. It is going to maintain that session until and unless we are there on the application. Once you close it, you are just out of that session. And that too also when the developer has not done anything behind the scene to maintain your session for a longer time. Okay. Now, there's one term here is then if you don't want to, or you can say that if you want to maintain a session for a longer period of time, you have two options. Either you can use the cookies, or you can use the rewriting URLs. Okay, so here we had one thing which we know, that sessions, whenever we are going to use it, it is only going to last for 30 minutes after closing my application. And if I wanted to maintain for a longer period of time, I can use the other things which are available. I can just associate with cookies, or I can just associate with your rewriting URLs. So we know that what cookies are. We'll just go through with the rewriting URLs. Now, here there is one concept, that is your rewriting URLs, that is nothing but uniform resource locators. That means what you are doing is, say for example, we'll just go through with this particular diagram. So this is one, what you have, the user. Okay, the user is finding one of the URL, the facebook.com. So that URL is going to head to the server, Facebook server. From here, the URL is going to fetch, and it is going to come to the user. Okay. But when the next time, okay, when the specified time, the user is trying again the same page. So what is happening? Again going back to the server, but it is going to find out the old URL which the user have, identified, or the which user has requested, and that URL is going to be pulled, and it is going to get executed with the code and getting to your browser. Okay, so that means we are not again creating the sessions, again creating the things for the user, but it is the old one, but we are just again mapping it to the one which we have already used it, the request what we have sent the previously. We are again mapping to the same request. Okay, you are not going to know about the request what you are doing it, but your server is going to understand that it is the same request what I'm getting from the client. So what I have to do, I have to rewrite it. I have to again map to the old one which the request was given by the client. Now here, one more thing, I'll just show you one diagram. Okay, see here. So for example, if an user, I am sending some value, and I'll just click on this button, it is going to my server page, which I have developed using this servlet code. It is going to this particular page. Okay, so till here what is happening, we're just sending request and it is going to one page. You're not getting any response here. Okay, just one message, that is what your welcome user. Now here what is happening, you have another link available. Whenever you're going to click on it, it is going to get redirected to the another one. So what basically you are doing, from one client you are just rerouting to the other one. So you have routed to here in this first page, and then again you have rerouted to the another page for the response. You have rerouted or remapped to the another one. Okay, and there it is possible that you can get the response also, and if the responses are not available, the specified the data is going to give to the user, that it can be the the error or an exception, whatever it is available, it is going to get back to the request or the client. Okay, so now here you have to understand that in URL rewriting, what is going to happen, whenever I am going to have a servlet written, and if I wanted to have a mapping from one servlet file to the another servlet file, what I can do is, say for example, there's a syntax URL facebook.com. Okay, and it is going to get separated with the help of question mark. So I have name one. Okay, that suppose for example your servlet one page, first servlet page. It is consisting of some values. So for example, hello world. Okay, and there is going to be another value. Say another name with the another value. Now what I want to do is, if from this URL, if I'm going to this URL and I am just going to one page which is having this name and values, and after that if I'm having the another name and values where I should get once I click onto that. Okay, so now if you'll see over here what is happening, I have a URL which is going to the another page which is having some values and names available. Okay, and if I have a link for the another page, I'll just click on it, I'll again redirect it to the other one. Again I have the name and value pair. Okay, so this is how your URL rewriting is going to work. Fine, it is not going to create the new sessions for your each web page. It is going to have the same application, you're going to get same session ID, and you're just going to get rerouted and remapped. Fine, for all these things. Okay, for all these things, now we have a request options over here. This one, this is what your client said. It has written some name over here, and it is going to click on go button. So if you remember in AWT, when we used to create the interface where I have, say, for example, a login page and I have a username and password. So as a user, if I'm putting that username and password, what will be the expectation? That username and password should go to the Java program. The Java program will understand the username and the password. It will authenticate, and based on the authentication, it is going to give the another web page or the another, options where I'm going to get the response. Fine. So fetching the request, fetching the value from the text field, okay, fetching the values from the client interface. We know that we have the scanner class and the specified methods to fetch that values from the user interface. So similarly here also we have a specified method to fetch the values from the user interface dynamically, that is your get parameter method. Okay, so here instead of using the methods which we had in your scanner class, that is like something next int method or whatever methods we have used. Okay, so that methods are going to work here, but the method name is going to be get parameter name. Okay, that is get parameter. Now here, say for example, just have an example over here, that's your URL. Okay, so instead of facebook.com, what URL I am having? Hello. And when I go to this particular URL, I'm just going to provide some user values and names, so that, for example, I'm saying that ID is 123 and user should be Alex. If it is authenticating and properly it is matching the values, I'm just going to redirect to the another sublet page. Okay, so this is how you're going to separate your uh, what you can say, your URLs. Okay, so you're going to have sub options also whenever you are saying the URL. Okay, so I told you that whenever we are going to have the client interface, and I expect that the interface should send the requested values to the server, it is going to fetch from the server using one of the method, that is something known as get parameter method. Okay, I don't have that much of time. I think only 3 to 4 minutes are left. Okay, so I'll just stop here and we'll be continuing with this in the next lecture. Okay, so thank you for patiently listening.